down goes Marjorie Greene, at least on social media. Now, you are already probably aware of this. She has been apparently permanently suspended from Twitter. Twitter put out a statement through a spokesperson saying, "We permanently suspended Marjorie Greene for repeated violations of our COVID-19 misinformation policy. We've been clear that per our strike system for this policy, we will permanently suspend accounts for repeated violations of the policy." And we also just found out that she's apparently been suspended on Facebook for a day. We'll see. This is sort of like, if Twitter is gonna have accountability, anything headed by Mark Zuckerberg can have 1/1000th the accountability, I suppose. But anyway, it's been almost exactly 1 year since Trump was permanently banned on Twitter because it was believed that he was inciting political uprising and violence and all that. And this means that we will miss out on Marjorie Greene tweeting on the 6th. You fill in the blank on what you think she'd be tweeting on that day. I can say that her recent Twitter activity leading up to the ban was pushing for a national divorce and attacking the holiday of Kwanzaa. So American culture, Francesca, has clearly lost a lot from her no longer being on Twitter.
Well, I just want to say that this is exactly like the Holocaust, and now I know I'm not supposed to make those comparisons, but I feel like it is very apt. Did you know that 6 million Jews lost the ability to tweet right before they died? And that was like the first, that was actually the real thing, in fact, because if you can't tweet, it's like you are dead. Anyway, you can't hold me accountable.
You died the true death.
You died the true death. This is all good on Parler, even though Parler sucks because there's no libs to dunk on.
The best part of top Parler has always been screenshotting my parlors and then tweeting them. I look forward to doing that on into the new fiscal year. So anyway, look, now technically she is still sort of on Twitter. Her official congressional Twitter account, as you can see in the screenshot, is still active. Historically, she has not been particularly interested in using that because that's a sort of account where you would, for instance, tweet work that you had done as a congresswoman, legislation you were working on, maybe thoughts that you had had. And so it was a bit content poor for a while. We will see if she will try, as Trump did in his immediate ban, in the immediate aftermath of the ban, to just use whatever Twitter account he still had access to. You remember they had to go around like bopping gophers on the head as he used like every family Twitter account.
He's like, hey Mark, come here. Can I see your phone? Mark, no, Mr. President, no.
Yeah, so maybe that'll happen. Now, why did they do this? Well, back in March of last year, Twitter announced that it would permanently suspend accounts that received 5 or more strikes or notifications about posts containing misleading information about COVID-19 vaccines. So look, I can't speak for Twitter, but I can presume that the idea is that they believe that influential accounts with a large following purposefully and habitually misinforming people about a pandemic mid-pandemic might lead to bad outcomes. And they didn't want their private platform to be a venue for that. She kept doing it over and over and over. Last July, she received a 12-hour ban. Then in August of last year, she was banned for 1 week. She was fully aware of the policy. Every ban was slightly longer than the last, and she knew what would happen, but she just kept tweeting misinformation. On Saturday, she tweeted that the federal government was ignoring extremely high amounts of COVID vaccine deaths, which is not true and doesn't exist. But she has a following and she is convincing people that they might die if they get the medicine to stop them from getting COVID. And so now we get to have a debate, Francesca. Was this acceptable for Twitter to do?
Yes, it absolutely was. I think, it is always difficult when you talk about deplatforming, because I think deplatforming often falls on the backs of specifically progressives and leftists. And traditionally, those are the folks who've been censored. But more and more extremists are the right wing, and they should be deplatformed, and that is a good thing. And of course, it doesn't mean that the movement or the anti-vax or the anti-science misinformation goes away, right? It goes to other places, Parler and Telegram, and it only, it also makes them a martyr. But my God, like, look at a year since Trump has been on Twitter. Has it been a less toxic internet? Has our discourse been like impacted positively from that? Yes. So I think Zuckerberg needs to get on board with this. A lot of people who've been spreading anti-vax conspiracy theories are still allowed on different platforms. Some are on Facebook, some are on on Instagram and Twitter. Obviously, I know it's the Instagram and Facebook are the same thing. If they code their language enough, the problem is Marjorie Greene didn't code her language. But when you do, you get around all the censors and it's fine. You can stay as long as you want.
Yeah, no, she's not going to code much at all. She's not one of the more clever ones of that bunch. But anyway, look, I think you could have a complex, multifaceted conversation about what sorts of, like standards of language and stuff like that, standards of fact checking are appropriate for public platforms, and in particular when it comes to politicians. But I think a lot of what you are probably seeing in the immediate aftermath of her being banned is not that. It is people who, to one degree or another, are like Marjorie Greene, effectively grifters who spread misinformation purposefully as their career, and they are not going to like someone being banned, even if it's obviously within their rights. This is not a government body. They're allowed to have standards that are clearly posted, that she's known about for a year, that she repeatedly, purposefully violated. But they will pretend that all of that doesn't exist. And in fact, the only thing you need to know is, hey, there's the First Amendment, and she spoke, and they banned her. Okay, yeah, that's the level of discourse that we're gonna have. So I'm sure some people who are also worried about being blocked from spreading their grift on Twitter will hate this. For those of us who would like less people to be dying constantly from COVID, maybe it seems like a good thing.
Last thing I'm gonna say is I really want the right wing to get on board with things like greater regulation of big tech. They always love to whine about big tech, but what they wanna do is they wanna get in behind closed doors into meetings with Mark Zuckerberg and convince him to essentially, skew the algorithm in their favor, as if the right-wing outrage is not already skewed in the favor of conspiracy theorists like Marjorie Greene, right?
Yeah.
But what left-wingers want, what we want, is greater regulation of a completely out of control conglomerate internet that is like squeezing out smaller voices and lets hate speech run rampant. Dare I say even nationalize, although in the hands of someone like Trump, that'd be terrible. But I'm totally on board with someone like Senator Warren's efforts to break up big tech. When is the right gonna get on board with breaking up big tech? Or do you just wanna have them play more in your favor? You just wanna bend the rules. You don't wanna actually change the rules. You want special privilege.
Yeah, no, they don't actually want, they pretend they want regulate. Their whole thing is not regulating business. They want business to be able to do whatever they want, but they want the business to be bent to benefit them, which it already is and will continue to be. That's all. They will continually threaten some sort of regulation that never actually manifests. But anyway, by the way, I just want to point out in terms of like their supposed opposition to any sort of like canceling her for misinformation or whatever. Let's transition just briefly into this. In the wake of her being knocked off of Twitter, Joe Rogan has started an account on Gettr. Says, just in case S over at Twitter gets even dumber, I'm here now as well. Yes, so he is just there in case Twitter gets any worse or more censors, not to appeal to the right-wing guys on Gettr. That's not what Joe Rogan would want to do. But anyway, he's on Gettr, so that's the one that Jason Miller started. He told Fox News at the time that it would be independent from social media monopolies. Well, it's a separate company, I guess by its very nature, but you would love it to be the biggest only game in town. So that's nonsense. Independent from cancel culture, embracing free speech. Okay, well, they already canceled the term groyper, the racist term groyper, after Nicholas Fuentes was banned. And so they banned him, which I think makes sense, but they're saying they wouldn't do that. So then in response, his followers started using this word a bunch. so they banned the word. Again, they say that he violated clearly defined terms of use, which I think they get to have. But they say that social media companies do not get to have terms of use. And they certainly shouldn't be banning people or words. That's a violation of free speech. That's cancel culture. No, you are demonstrating that platforms do have to balance these sorts of things. And so again, this is a part of the potential conversation around this that we will not really have, but it does exist. They're gonna have these issues too if they last long enough and get big enough to actually have a problem with it. For more political news breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/thedamagereport. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.